The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's webinar. It's a pleasure to have you here and have you participate in today's webinar. Today, we're going to talk about how to build your high-performance sales team to drive growth. As we go throughout today's webinar, if you have questions, please send me the questions, and I'll make sure that I get a hold of them either during the webinar or at the end of the webinar, because we want to make sure that everybody's questions get addressed. So here's our agenda for today. What we're going to discuss is really 5 major areas that can have a significant influence on how you're going to drive high-performance sales growth for revenue, for sales, for your company. The first is training for high performance. We're going to talk about that because as you look at both internal training, training for partners, and training for new employees, it's important to give them the right information, the right training, the right foundation, and be able to take advantage of the latest and greatest techniques, social selling, and some of what we call sales 2.0, 3.0 techniques that you want to apply for your company. The second area that we're going to talk about is creating 100% of your sales leads. Many companies I talk to are only creating 25% to a maximum of 50% of the sales leads. What that leads to is salespeople that are not spending much time actually in-person selling with prospects and buyers. Forrester recently put out a report that says that the average salesperson only spends about 35% of their time interfacing directly with a client. The rest of the time is spent doing research, putting together proposals, putting together presentations, or doing something else that may lead to a sale but is not directly selling. The third area is accelerating your sales process. We're going to talk about this because most people today, when they begin the buying process and the investigation, they're going to start on the internet. They're going to start looking at your website. They're going to start looking at a variety of different sources that they trust. And most websites out there today really are information billboards. They don't really assist in the buying process. They don't enable that, and they don't start it. And so we're going to talk about that because if you can start the buying process immediately and align with your buyer, that's going to shorten your sales cycles. It's going to help you accelerate the selling process. The fourth area is delivering the right sales tools at just the right time. And we're going to talk about how you can do that. And the fifth area is making your forecast more reliable. And that's key. Many companies that we begin working with are in a situation where they have what I call this tsunami push that happens at the end of each quarter, which means that a lot of the deals that were supposedly going to close for the quarter get pushed to the next quarter. And there's reasons behind that, and so we're going to delve into those reasons. So that's our agenda for today. But feel free to ask any questions as we go through the webinar. Let's make sure that you get the information that you're looking for as you look at building your high-performance sales team, not only in Q4 right now, but also for all of 2018. Each of you that are attending today's webinar are going to receive a copy of this infographic that we've created. And it's really talking about building the right foundation and then building off that foundation as you move forward in terms of high-performance sales teams. So we're going to talk about these 5 areas. So let's go ahead and talk about the first one, training for high performance. One of the things that we've done is we've investigated the top 12 sales training methodologies that are available to B2B companies. And here's a list of some of those companies. The Challenger Sale, New Conceptual Selling, Customer-Centric Selling, Medic, for very sophisticated, large-scale selling, power-based selling, for inside sales, for transactional selling, that's really good, Sandler Selling and Solution Selling. We've got Snap Selling, Spin Selling, Strategic Selling, TAS, which is Target Account Selling, and Value Selling. So these are 12 excellent sales methodologies that you can apply to your company. The key is picking the right one that marries together with your selling situation that you have at each company. So for instance, when I was at Intact, a cloud company providing financial management systems, we started out with training and salespeople in the field, but we also built an inside sales team. And we found that the inside sales team could be 3 times more effective than the field team in terms of closing transactions with the same subscription value. So we actually use Sandler training as our baseline at Intact to train all of our sales professionals that we had and also provide that to our partners. So it's an example where we didn't want to overcomplicate the training based upon the transactional value, and we wanted to make sure that it was streamlined for the type of transactions that we needed to do each and every month. So I have written a white paper on this, and if you'd like a copy of that, as far as these 12 methodologies, please send me an email at the end of today's webinar, and I'll be happy to send you the white paper that compares the 12 different methodologies together. Now, many of you have heard about social selling, and social selling is really important given today's circumstances with your buyer. What it does is combine the power and reach of social media with the established sales processes and methodologies I just talked about. I have a friend of mine that started a company called Connected Selling, and Deb Gallagher is excellent at that. And so what you're really doing here is you're looking at a couple of things that are important as far as trends. First of all, the reason why social media and social selling is important for your sales team today is because many of these buying journeys are beginning without ever integrating or working with a salesperson. So you need to find other ways to get involved with your target audience, with decision makers, and social media is an excellent way to do that. The other thing that we're encouraging as far as social selling is that typically when you're selling to the enterprise, you're going to involve a set group of people that are both influencers as well as decision makers. And so CEB says that on average 5.4 people that you're going to need to influence and work with through that sales process. Another important thing about social media is that many companies are starting to do their vendor research on social media. And the other thing that's really interesting about social media is that it's becoming a reference program or platform. So just as you would ask for references, in many cases, or looking at product reviews, you're going to use social media to connect with other users of the solution, services, so that you can determine what their satisfaction value is that they have today. Now, 90% of today's decision makers out there aren't going to respond to cold calling or cold outreach. It's just a fact of life. So there's other ways that you need to get involved in terms of beginning that buyer's journey early in the process. And finally, 74% of buyers who chose a sales rep that was first to add value and insight. So if you're in early, you're working with the right decision makers in your target audience, chances are you're going to have a leg up in terms of closing that piece of business. So these are all important criteria to look at when you're thinking about integrating social selling into your selling methodology that you have at your company. Another important aspect that we very rarely find as we've worked with over 300 different B2B companies is that very seldom do we find a current sales or marketing playbook. So these playbooks can be extraordinary in terms of helping new sales reps get up to speed quickly. So Forrester says that the average sales rep will take about 7 months to get up to speed 100%. We think that if you have the right training, the right tools, the right enablement, you'll be able to get those same sales reps up to speed in 2 to 3 months, or half the time. So what's in a sales playbook or in a marketing playbook? First of all, in many cases, we'll help create specific sales playbooks for specific situations. So you may have a team that is involved primarily in customer acquisition. You may have another team that's involved with customer upsell, cross-sell, and you may have a third team or your client services team that's involved in services. upsell, and cross-sell. In each case, you may have a separate playbook that you're going to use and keep current with best practices on how to enable that sales process. In those sales playbooks, you're going to have things like scripts and messaging. Typically, what you want is messaging really straight out of the buyer's head. You want sales qualification questions. You want the profile of your ideal customer. And you want what Gartner calls competitive battle cards, so that your sales team is able to quickly outposition the competition and answer specific questions about how you compare against your competitors. And there's much more that goes into the sales playbook. But typically, it's the best practices that you're going to have and keep current, and you're going to be able to train your sales team on doing that. Now, the thing that I found with all these different training vehicles is that it needs to happen not only with the sales team, it needs to happen with the management team. So the more that you can train your entire team in the same lexicon, the same strategy, and the same approach, the more cohesive you'll be in terms of how you're going to go to market as a company. So that's the first area. The second area that I'd like to talk about right now is probably the most important and most often missed at every company. A typical company, regardless of size, could be a public company, could be a private company, will create about 25 to 30%, at maximum, typically 50% of the sales leads that your sales team leads. Now, your sales team, as any sales team, is going to figure how to make their numbers one way or another. They're going to try to do that. The challenge is that most sales teams are only spending about a third of their time actually face-to-face selling to prospects. The other two-thirds, according to Forrester, are focused on non-sales activities. It could be focused on doing research. It could be focused on putting together a proposal. It could be focused on putting together some type of presentation, and so forth. The challenge with that is that you're not using your sales team to the highest efficiency when they don't have leads that are qualified to follow up on. So one of the things that we created at On Demand Advisors is what we call the demand generation engine. And next month, we're going to have an entire webinar dedicated specifically to this. So I hope you attend that and join us. But the demand generation engine, and why it's important is, if you look at the three funnels that we have here, this first one is the lead funnel. That's where your marketing activities need to create this volume of leads that you're going to need. This funnel now fills this next funnel, which is your opportunity funnel. So now that someone's interested in your solutions or services, they get to graduate and to become a sales opportunity. Once they become a sales opportunity, they're going to move on to your CRM funnel, which is the third funnel here. And that's your CRM or sales funnel that you have like in Salesforce. And here, now you're going to graduate them through best practices and close that business. But the key here is to actually build this, operate this, and scale this. If you can do that well, then you can really start scaling and have predictable and profitable revenue outcomes. As an example, one of the companies that we began working with in North Carolina is a company called AvidXchange. AvidXchange is a provider, a cloud-based company, a provider of accounts payable systems, payment management systems like e-payment solutions, and paperless invoicing solutions. So when we began working with them and we sat down and talked to their CEO, Mike Prager, we talked to Mike and wanted to find out what did Mike need to accomplish over the next years that he was looking forward with us. And he said he'd like to get our assistants to double revenue every year going forward. So what we figured out as we did a revenue engineering exercise with Mike is that we needed to help him create 400 leads per month. So with AvidXchange, we put in place this demand generation engine. And year in, year out, for 3 years, we helped Mike and the team create 400 sales opportunities every month. We also helped them qualify those sales opportunities and set up appointments with the sales team. What ended up happening is AvidXchange took off like a rocket. They were able to double revenue every year going forward, and they've been incredibly successful and probably one of the most successful companies in North Carolina. So kudos to them. Their challenge when we began working with them is they didn't have a demand generation engine, and they really didn't have a marketing department. So we had an opportunity to work with them and provide that to them as a business partner, like we do with many of our clients, and help them grow that DNA, and then insource that finally over a period of time. So another great success story in terms of building this engine. Now going hand in hand is just if you're going to get a bear to come to the tree, you've got to create honey. And so the honey that we look at, that we create for our customers, is this demand generation roadmap. So when you look at where your prospects are or your buyer is in the cycle that you have today, remember we have 3 funnels. We have the first funnel, which would be considered top of funnel. We have the middle funnel, and then we have bottom of funnel, which is really your sales funnel. And what you're going to need is you're going to need to be able to create the right content that's going to attract, engage the right buyers at the right stage. So for instance, if I'm trying to create a lot of people that are interested in your services, we're going to probably create something like a buyer's guide. A buyer's guide is a great way to give your potential buyer their wherewithal on how they should be evaluating, buying, and benefiting from your type of solution. That's a great place to get started, is give somebody a buyer's guide. If you're in the middle of the funnel, meaning they've already expressed interest in your solutions, then maybe what we need to do is help them with an ROI or business justification guide. That way we're giving them the knowledge, the wherewithal, and the tools to figure out how they're going to cost justify and create the ROI for your service today. If you have a buyer or a prospect in the bottom of the funnel, you're going to have different content for them. So for them, what they really want to hear about is other clients that are in their industry using your service that are very successful today. So there, it may be important to have a customer video. It may be important to have a customer case study. It may be important to have an industry success story. So all these things play together in terms of helping you attract and move your buyer through the process together, where you're fully aligned and you're enabling the buyer to accomplish the buying process quickly. So that's part of the demand generation engine. And I haven't found a company today that doesn't need it. We just have found that we've become very, very good at helping companies create the demand generation engine and implement that with their sales team. What I found as I was building sales teams earlier in my career is I would be able to recruit, train, and attract the best and brightest people in the industry. But the challenge I had is if I couldn't feed them with the quantity and quality of sales leads that they needed, it was really a very expensive asset that I had, and it was going to underperform because a lot of great salespeople aren't going to be good at doing research. They may not be good at prospecting, but they are very good, if they're in the right place, very good at closing business for your company. So you want to really enable that in terms of performance. So that's the second area we'd like to talk about today, which is building your demand generation engine, putting that in place, and then scaling as you need to scale your revenue growth. It's very capital efficient. So let's talk about the third area. The third area really has to do with how do you accelerate the sales process. Now, one of the important things that we look at when you're thinking about accelerating the sales process is understanding buyer behavior. And what's really changed over the past 5 to 10 years is that buyers really are empowered, and they start a lot of their investigation on the websites and on the internet today. So when they have a need for something specific, they're thinking about a new solution, how to address a business challenge, they have business pains that they're trying to address, they're going to go out on the web and they're going to start looking at different solutions. They may go to your website, they may go to a competitive website, they may go to industry experts and their sites, they may talk to analysts, they may talk to other companies that are using different solutions. They may look at solution reviews that are out there online. All this typically happens before they ever engage a specific salesperson from any given company. So the reason that's important is that you need to find new ways to accelerate the sales process. The other thing that is interesting is this fact that Gartner and Forrester have come up with. They predict that by 2020, more than 80% of the buying process will occur without any direct human-to-human interaction. Wow, isn't that amazing? So we hire salespeople because they're great at qualifying and closing business. Yet what we need to do to empower them is we need to empower the front end of the sales process and serve that up to our buyers so that our salespeople can do the back end of closing, overcoming objections, and really doing a great job in terms of accelerating the close for your company. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, there are two things here that you want to align. There's the buyer's journey and there's seller's journey. Most people operate within their CRM system off the seller's journey and the steps that take place as far as sales activity. What's most important here is looking at the buyer's journey. What does the buyer want to do when they're evaluating your type of solution? And really, most importantly, how can you move your website from being an information billboard to being a solution that enables the buyer's journey? This is really key. So when somebody hears about your company, somebody receives a great piece of information about your company, somebody basically hears about a wonderful ebook that you have, whatever the course is, they're going to go to your website. So that's the moment of truth. So when somebody comes to your website, either your website is going to engage the buyer and help enable the buyer's journey, or it's not. Now, unfortunately, most websites out there today don't. Most websites actually are an obstacle to the buyer's journey, not an enabler. So what we did at On Demand Advisors is we created something called the buyer-driven website. We're going to show you some production examples of that. But essentially, think about taking the buyer's journey, which is the sales journey, and graphing that onto your website and enabling a buyer to come in, self-select, and then move through that process. Why is this important? Well, it's important because if people, your buyers, are really starting their buying process and investigation without a salesperson, you need to be able to influence that on the front end. You need to enable that so that you become the choice for knowledge, for best practices for your target audiences. So anyway, we're going to talk about bringing these two together, the seller's journey and the buyer's journey. And the way we start this process is we architect the buyer's journey. We create the step-by-step navigation that the buyer wants to go through. And either we will investigate that typically with the buyer or buying community, or we'll start with the sales department with the best salesperson that you have and model that information from a buyer's perspective. So once we do that, let's look at a couple of different examples. And this really will help you accelerate your sales process in enormous ways. So the first thing is, here's a company called Logic Bay. They're a client of ours in Wilmington, North Carolina. And Logic Bay provides a partner relationship management solution. So what we looked at as we worked with them is there are two buyer's journeys that we created for them on their website. The first one is the buyer's journey for a typical end customer. So when you go to the website, it starts off with all you have to do is put in that you want to get started on this, and we're going to take you through what are the typical challenges that you would have if you, let's say you were a VP of Business Development. What is the Logic Bay PRM solution? Who are their clients? What are the solutions that are available to you? What's the pricing for that? And then how do you get started? It's such a wonderful streamlined process for all of you in terms of taking you as a buyer through this process. But we didn't stop there. We went to the next step and said, okay, if that's the end customers that are coming to you as a potential buyer, what about partners? So we created a buyer's journey for potential partners that they have. Again, this is a unique buyer's journey that they have. It starts off, if you're a potential partner coming to look at reselling or providing their solution or implementing their solutions, what do they offer? What do you add as a partner? What are frequently asked questions that every partner wants to know? Testimonials from existing partners. What are the revenue opportunities that you have? And then finally, how do you apply? Again, this is a dramatically streamlined process, and it really enables the buying process for partners and for end prospects on the Logic Bay website. So Logic Bay is one of those companies that provides a solution, and let's look at another company that provides a service. So one of our customers is a company called ICUC. ICUC is one of the most successful companies in the social media management services arena. And so they have lots of wonderful iconic brands that they work with to provide social media management services to, like a Starbucks, like a Chevron, like a Novartis as a pharmaceutical company, like Ralph Lauren as a retail company, Coca-Cola, Disney. So many iconic brands are customers today working together with ICE. So what we have here today, as you look at this, is we've got an example of their website. And if you look at their website, what we have here is the buyer's journey by vertical or by industry. What we could see here is that this is an example of the retail space. And if you're a retailer and looking to work with a social media management service company, what you really want is you want information that's going to be focused on retail. That's key. So really what you're looking at here is, if I'm a retailer, tell me about how do you work with retailers? How do you provide assistance with our retail customers? How do you address the type of pains or challenges I have in the retail industry? What are your retail solutions? And what are the next steps? What we're doing is we've created 12 different buyer's journeys based upon different industries with ICUC. And if you go to the website and you look under industries, you'll see that we provide that same navigation to enable that. What a magnificent way for your website now to actually assist in the selling process and doing a lot of upfront work that is typically done by salespeople. But because of the dynamics that are existing today in today's marketplace, you need vehicles like your website to be able to do that and do that up front before they interact with the salesperson. The other thing that we offer on each of these different pages is customer case studies, retail or industry expert interviews that we do with decision makers. That's what they want to hear about. Who's in charge of retail at ICUC? Who's in charge of pharma at ICUC? Help us understand what you're doing for each of these industries. And so we've created these calls to action that really will engage your audience. So this is another great way to accelerate your sales process, is through these buyer-driven websites. Okay, so thank you for that. Now let's look at the next one. The fourth area that we like to talk about as far as building high-performance sales teams is equipping them, enabling them with the right sales tools at the right time. As we've surveyed many companies, we found that most companies, probably at least 50% of them, don't have a formalized way in terms of providing sales tools to their sales force. Another 50% may have a repository. They may have an FTP server. They may even have something like a marketing encyclopedia associated with the CRM solution that they have. But we like to take that one step further. Once you have a repository, whether that's a sales internet, a wiki, or another mechanism, what we're suggesting that you do, and we help many companies do this, start organizing your sales assets by stage in the sales process. That way, if I'm in the discovery stage working with a prospect, I can go right there and I can see what's available for me to assist in the discovery process. What are the scripts that I'm going to use? What are the tools available to me? And so forth. If I'm at the proof stage, where I need to prove to them that we're a great partner, what I may have there is I may have a presentation around sales methodologies moving to implementation. So how do we actually help you ensure your success to the implementation that we offer of that service? Another thing you may have is you may have customer case studies, industry case studies, or actually customer videos. So being able to have all of that immediately available to me as I'm at the right stage working with the prospect or the buyer is going to enable my success and eliminate a lot of dead time that I have as a salesperson. This is really about taking your A players and giving them the tools to be even more efficient. And it's enabling your B players, which is the mass majority of most companies, to become A players in terms of their execution and their success. Okay, the next area we like to talk about, the fifth area, is how do you make your forecast more reliable? And this goes hand in hand with building high performance teams, because in the end, sales is all about numbers. It's all about making numbers, exceeding numbers, making the company successful in terms of new customers, and also doing that in the most profitable, capital efficient way possible. So one of the things that we help companies do is change the way that they measure progress. What do we mean by that? What we're talking about here is moving from sales activity in your CRM system to buyer accomplishment. So if we understand the buyer's journey and we understand the steps that they want to go through, wouldn't it make more sense to use those stages in the CRM solution instead of sales activity? Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. In the sales activity arena, typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to engage with a prospective buyer. I'm going to qualify them. I'm going to engage them with the right materials. I'm going to understand their needs. I'm going to take them through a presentation. I'm going to then move from a presentation to really having an open discussion about how do we implement that service. And then we're going to go into a proposal, provide the proposal. Once we get a vendor of choice, then we're going to go through negotiations to get that done. Each of those are different sales milestones that I'm going to create in my CRM solution. However, as an example, let's say I give a presentation. What I'd rather do than give a presentation and check that box, I'd rather give the presentation and have the buyer agree that I've addressed all of their outstanding needs. If I do that last piece, I make sure that I don't move on to the next stage of the buying process until I've got the buyer agreement. What does that allow me to do? It allows me to make sure that the buyer is aligned with me. It enables me to do a better job forecasting accurately where the buyer is in the buying process. And it also makes sure that that I don't rush through the sales process just so I can lose the deal because I checked off all the boxes. So those are really important ways to make sure that I'm moving forward with the right team. And then within the quarter, how do I forecast? Well, a common way to do that I've always used in the past is every opportunity that's forecasted to close within the quarter is either a commit, upside, or stretch. So a commit, you've been selected, it's a done deal, and it's just about negotiating the T's and C's. An upside, it could be 50-50. You're still competitive, you're still in the sales process, and a stretch says that probably it's not going to close this quarter unless you can do something to actually move that opportunity from closure next quarter into this quarter. So this is a good way to be able to do that. So at On Demand Advisors, we're all about helping companies be very successful in building, scaling revenue, and doing that in the most capital efficient manner possible. So we really excel and address three areas. One is a revenue growth strategy. We call that the revenue acceleration map. Two is best practices. Since we now have worked with over 250 B2B companies and management teams to implement these best practices, we understand what works and what doesn't work. And then three, what good is having a plan if you can't execute the plan? So if you're missing key resources today, so for instance, you don't have a VP of marketing, or you don't have somebody that's going to help you build out demand, or you don't have the right person that you need in terms of sales enablement, or you don't have the right person who's now helping you build out the partner program. We're going to provide the right expertise and the right experts to get the job done. So just like my earlier example where we talked about AvidXchange, we actually help provide them the marketing resources so that we can bring the right people aboard, get them trained, get them up to speed, and take responsibility for that solution. This is the revenue acceleration map. This is something that we have created a decade ago, and we refined with all these companies ever since. So in December, we're going to talk about how do you engineer your revenue growth for 2018. In November, we're going to talk about how to build the demand generation engine for your company and really provide 100% of the leads that your sales team needs. Many clients that we work with are all different stages. We work with startup companies, we work with mid-stage companies that are trying to scale and grow, and we work with large companies that have that white space that needs to be addressed. So let's recap our webinar today. We talked about 5 ways that you can drive and build high-performance sales teams to drive revenue and sales growth. The first is giving the team the right training so that they can truly be high performance. So that includes not only the sales methodologies, it includes social selling, it includes the right playbooks that memorialize best practices that you want everybody to follow in your company. The second area that we talked about is creating that demand generation engine so that you can create 100% of the sales leads that are required by your team. The third is having vehicles such as your website, like a buyer-driven website, so that you can accelerate the sales process. The fourth is aligning the tools with just-in-time usage by your sales team or partner team. And the other thing that I didn't talk about in this fourth area is just the ability for you to do change control. So what you don't want is you don't want 5 versions of your contract. You don't want 5 versions of your sales presentation for prospects. You want to have one that represents the best ideas and practices that are shared across your team, and you want to be able to have change revision control over those assets. And the fifth area is making your forecast reliable. So those are 5 excellent examples that you can apply today for your company. At On-Demand Advisors, we're here to help you implement them, optimize them, and then we do what we call the build, operate, transfer, which is we help companies build these revenue growth best practices, optimize them, making sure that they scale and work for your company, and then transfer that DNA inside your company. So here's some potential steps you can take from today's webinar. The first is, if you'd like a copy of our guide to sales methodologies that I authored, please send me an email to rjakowski@ondemandadvisors.com, and I'll be happy to send that copy to you. The next thing that you may want to do is email me or respond back to my email that's follow-up to this webinar, and let me know that you'd like to have a conversation to talk about. Let's discuss one of the most important areas for sales performance improvement for your company, and we'll set up a go-to-meeting to discuss that. The 2 other things that you may want to consider putting on your calendar and registering for is these upcoming 2 fabulous webinars that we're going to have, one on November 14th, which is how to create your demand generation engine for dramatic growth in 2018, and then on December 12th, how to engineer significant growth for your company in 2018. So these are both related. One is the demand generation engine, which is really demand for your company. And the second is really putting that revenue acceleration map and making sure you've got an actionable plan going into 2018. It's not a wish, it's not just a plan, it's the execution that you'll know on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis that you're hitting your goals and achieving the success that you deserve in 2018. So with that, I'd like to take a few questions at this time and open it up to the floor. So thank you very much for sending us your questions. So the first one is from Jake. Jake had a question which said, really had to do with social selling. And what Jake asked is, when can I learn more about social selling? So Jake, if the rest of the folks on the webinar today are also interested in this, then Deb and I will have a specific webinar that will have just on social selling so that you can figure out how this is going to apply and be integrated into your company. So thank you very much for that. This one is from Leah. Leah asked, of what you discussed today, what's the most important thing that we can do to get sales performance? And I think that the most important thing I would say that you could do is create the demand generation engine. There are a lot of things that we discussed today that are really important, but being able to create that engine in front of your sales team and give them the quantity and quality of sales opportunities to work on is going to be most important. And yet we find that very seldom is created in front of any great sales team. So that if you want performance, then tee it up for them. Okay, another question that we have is from John, and John had a question that says, have you built the guide for services, for the services organization? And the answer is yes, John, we have. We built a playbook for the services team. We also have built a upsell, cross-sell playbook for a company in North Carolina, another company that we work with. And that company has 6,000 education institutions that are currently customers, but they have 15 different services. So what they wanted to do was they wanted to be more efficient in terms of being able to upsell, cross-sell all the new services that they had. So we helped them build that strategy that they could execute and be successful in terms of upsell, cross-sell. So great question, and thank you very much for that question. Finally, Ram asked if there's going to be a copy available of this webinar. Yes, we do record every one of these. Specifically, if you'd like a copy, just send me an email, and I'll make sure I send you a compact copy of this webinar. I'm also going to make sure that we do post this eventually to our website under our offer section so that you'll be able to see this off the website in the next week or two. With that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for today's webinar. It's been exciting to have all you join us. It's been exciting to have your participation and questions, and we look forward to engaging with you to actually help you ensure that this is a fabulous Q4 and that you're ready to go for 2018 to make that the best year ever for your company. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.